So we are joined today, the topic at hand here is to talk about and interact with and learn from people who are working in social justice, who are working in advocacy types of organizations. I'm very excited for our panel presentations that we are joined by Miguel Bustos from the Glide Foundation and Paige Logan, who works in health advocacy, public health. And so the way that this will work is I have some questions that I would like to ask them as moderator, but I appreciate all of you posting questions into the chat feature that we will hopefully allow some time at the end of our panel discussion that we can go ahead and I will read to get to those. So again, Miguel and Paige, thank you very much for joining us today. And also to the others, while you are not talking, if you could have your everything on mute, that would be great. So Miguel and Paige, if you could, I'd first like you both to just introduce yourselves and give your name, where it is that you work, undergraduate studies that you pursued or graduate studies as well, and maybe even some previous positions that you've held. So Paige, if you'd like, why don't you go ahead and get us started?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Paige Logan. I graduated from Davidson in 2014. I was a psychology major, and I most recently just graduated from UNC Chapel Hill with a master's in public health. I graduated this past May and have just started a new role this week, actually, at a national nonprofit called Health Leads. I work on the research and development team there, and they focus on creating equitable, community-driven and community-owned networks of health and social services called community information exchanges. And they do some other stuff, but that's kind of what I have been focusing on and will focus on. And some of the advocacy roles that I've held, I've worked for NARAL Pro-Choice North Carolina in Durham, as well as IPASS, which is a reproductive justice international NGO focused on abortion access in globally outside of the US. And then I've done some research in equity in tobacco control and prevention, a little bit around the doctor and patient relationship in more clinical healthcare settings. And I actually have worked in the private sector a little bit too, right out of college. So I'm really excited to speak with you all and happy to connect.
Thank you, Paige.
Hi, everyone. My name is Miguel Bustos, and I'm coming at you from San Francisco, California. I work at Glide as the director for the Center for Social Justice. I have a bachelor's in international relations, a master's in international peace and conflict resolution, and a master's in business administration and corporate social responsibility. Places where I've worked in the past, I have a very storied career. I started out of graduate school working for President Clinton at the White House, and then went to go work for Vice President Gore. Then in 2000, came back to California, did some work with nonprofits, went into the philanthropic world as a program manager for program officer for foundations, worked for two local officials, our mayor, Gavin Newsom, who's now our governor, Ron Dellums, who was mayor of Oakland, Congresswoman Barbara Lee. I worked for her as their deputy district director, was senior director of the Americas for the Levi Strauss Foundation, was senior vice president at Wells Fargo for 5 years, and then was asked to come and join the Glide team as a director for social justice. So I can't wait to get into the meaty part of the discussion and questions.
Awesome. Thank you both. Yes, and I do want to say, I mean, a shout out to both of you, especially a shout out to Paige, who, as she said, is starting a job this week and literally in her first week, moved appointments and meetings around so that she could make sure that she could be here today. So thank you, Paige. We appreciate that. Okay. My first question to both of you is, how did you, if you think back and, to undergrad, or think back on your professional career, how did you determine that you wanted to pursue this professional area of interest? Like, I'm always curious, was it always an interest? Did you have like an aha moment, like a particular course or internship or something? Or did your interest evolve over time? So I'll let whoever wants to start answer that question of, you're here talking about social justice. How and when did you find yourself wanting to be here?
You want to go, Paige?
Sure, I'll go first. I had a very wonky, and sorry, I'm in an echoey place, so sorry if there's a little bit of feedback, but I had a very windy road to where I am right now. After I graduated from Davidson, I actually worked in management consulting in the private sector, and was really focused on like industrial and organizational psychology. And then quickly found out that that was probably not the place for me, and have kind of, winded around to finally land at a place where I think that I want to settle into. So I I feel like I always really cared about these types of issues that affected me personally, or close family personally, things like that. And just like, I mean, psychology is an observation of like the world around us and human behavior. So there is a lot of parallel, I think, and really felt like that was a personal passion, and have slowly started walking towards the path of like combining those two things. So I've always been active in the advocacy world, and I'm starting to now merge some of those things together. So I felt like I might have a little bit of a different perspective, as someone who has also just navigated the job world and networking and things like that. So yeah, I don't think there was an aha moment. I've just kind of taken opportunities as they have come to me, done a lot of self-reflection and things like that, and have kind of landed at this place right now.
I'm gonna be very honest with all of you. I've had no choice. When you're a person of color, when you grew up in an immigrant community like I did, you have no choice. And so for me, what I've tried to do in every single job that I've had, and you know what, and this is not about a job. Social justice is about how you see the world. It's not 9 to 5. It's how are you gonna live your life? And what truth and what justice are you gonna follow? And how are you gonna live your life when there's injustice? So for me, it's not about 9 to 5. It's not about a job. It's about me understanding that I needed to do my part to do the right thing. And so that's been our approach at Glide and even in my own life. So there was no aha moment. It's so funny because a lot of people, what happened with George Floyd, people are now so-called woke. Well, there are some folks that we have not had time to rest. We're grateful that people are woke now, but we haven't stopped having to worry, having to understand, having to feel. And so I don't want you to think that this is about a career move. It's about a life move. It's about how are you going to want to be in your life and what legacy you want to leave this planet with. That's how I see this work of justice. And all of us, I don't care where you are, whether you're a student or whether you're a community activist, whether you're a parent or a child, all of us have the ability to do the right thing. It's just finding the courage and opening up your eyes and your heart and your minds to be able to do it. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Miguel. I appreciate that. And I think a follow-up question that I would ask to kind of piggyback off of that is, um, you know, as a career counselor, I do notice I'm talking to more people who, to borrow that phrase, who are waking up to this aspect of social justice and feeling this, what can I do to do more? Um, you know, so if I'm talking, if you have the opportunity to talk to an undergrad who is in their first or their second year, so I throw this out to both of you, um, who are saying like, I want to channel this professionally, what tips or like what recommendations would you offer to them?
That's kind of hard. Well, I don't know. Maybe Paige, you got a better answer than I do.
I was going to see what you were going to say.
But for me, you know, there's so many causes and so many organizations that you could get involved with, whether it's, you know, the NAACP, whether it's Planned Parenthood, whether it's the Human Rights Campaign or the National Gay and Lesbian Task Force. You don't have to be someone from that community to work there. You could be an ally, right? You could, but you have to be passionate about it and you have to seek justice. At Glide, we are called truth seekers and truth tellers. And so I would start there. Find out what, you know, you all look at, you guys are smart. You know what the challenges are in this world. You know, you don't have to search far to see where fascism and injustice is happening, even in our own country. Search out organizations that are working in that field. You may want to start as a volunteer. If you're in school now, you may want to be a volunteer, but begin to get involved. And it's not for the other that you're doing this work. It's also for yourself, right? Because you yourself are going to stand up for something. That's part of the legacy you will leave, you know, your communities, your families, is by standing up for what is right. And I would say, you know, there are some incredible organizations. Please search them out because I think that's a good way to start. And maybe get an internship if I'm speaking scholastically, right? Find an internship to get involved. Write some of your papers on some of these issues. That's just gonna build on to bigger and better things.
Yeah, I would also add, it requires, and I'm sure folks have already done this, but like a solid amount of self-reflection and continuous self-reflection, and recognizing that this is a journey for yourself and acknowledging like where you stand and what you bring to the table in terms of like positionality and all of that kind of stuff. I think that's really important. And to always have like a learning mindset more than like, all right, I've mastered this like cultural competency skill or whatever. Like that's not, I wouldn't take that approach, even though I'm sure in like academia and at Davidson, everyone wants to like check the box. This is not a check the box type of situation. And I would also, I think Miguel, you were hitting this as get involved in community. I think whether it's like direct service or something where you are, and I know it's a little bit hard with COVID now, but like where you are not kind of like doing research or doing something a little bit more passive, I guess, for lack of a better word. But I think like there's something to be said about being in community and understanding those dynamics for sure.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Just a shout out to everybody. If you have questions, please post them in the chat, and then we'll hopefully spend some time at the end that I'll be able to post those to both of our panelists collectively. Or if you have individual questions, just let me know who you'd like that to be asked to. Question to follow up to each of you. what would you say are the most rewarding and most challenging aspects of your current role, of roles that you've had? I'll just leave it at that.
I'll say that one of the challenging is the isms that we have in the world, whether it's sexism, racism, homophobia, you name it. That's what's challenging. But the most rewarding thing is, I can only explain to you this by telling you this, is so at Glide, we feed about 3,500 people breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day, 364 days a year. And we work with the most marginalized. We work with the ones that, you know, society has tossed aside. And with COVID, we have a lot of people that used to work in restaurants that now cannot afford food. So they come to Glide. If you've ever seen the movie In Pursuit of Happiness with Will Smith, it's filmed at Glide, and it's about Glide's work. But one day I was walking into work, and I like to say good morning to everybody, because I may be the only person that acknowledges somebody all week. So imagine living in a world in which no one notices you. So I like to say good morning to the homeless, to the people who are standing in line. And the most amazing thing happens because they just light up. The fact that someone is interested in them. And so they'll talk to me, and I'll be standing there, and all of a sudden, all the things that society says we have to care about, like, for example, what a person looks like, that goes away. What a person sounds like, that goes away. What they're dressed like, or even how they smell. And at that moment, I feel free. That I feel like, wow, I have just lifted all this stuff that society says you have to be concerned about when you're around others. All that goes away. And there's a sense of freedom that I feel. And it's so rewarding, because not only for the person who I'm speaking to, they realize that someone cares about them, that they matter. But for me, I'm like, I could talk to anybody on this planet, and feel free. And that's such an amazing feeling to have, because all that other, artificial stuff goes away. So that's what I love about when I go to work, is talking to our people in line.
I also think it is really rewarding to work with folks who are very passionate and very smart about these issues. I feel like I am learning every single day from everyone, including folks at Davidson. So it is fulfilling in that way. I think when you're working and when you have aligned like your professional life and I'm assuming your personal life in terms of like your values and what you believe in and what you want to fight for, it is both energizing and can be exhausting, which I'm sure all of you have probably experienced that a little bit. So there's pluses and minuses, of course. And I think a big challenge that a lot of folks are reckoning and organizations are reckoning with right now is all of those isms that Miguel was saying. This field is not immune to those isms either. So that is a challenge for sure. There's racism and sexism and homophobia in a lot of institutional organizations and things like that. So navigating that is definitely a challenge.
I'm going to actually jump in because there's a question that was asked in the chat that kind of, I think maybe you've sort of touched on this and relates to that. One of our participants asked if could either of you offer any advice for, as it's put, harnessing and latching on to hope in contexts where corruption or culture and policy appear very stagnant?
That's a big one.
That's a big one, yeah.
I would encourage folks to go off in the chat, and I don't think I have the perfect answer. I think we all probably have some really great collective answers, but just working previously in reproductive justice, I think though that I wouldn't say it's a stagnant place, but I think there are some strong attacks on folks' right to healthcare and things like that. That can seem a little bit daunting. So advice for harnessing and latching onto hope. I think right now it's like a lot of personal connections, finding folks that you can lean on and connect with. I guess that go in line with your personal, where you feel personally safe, but also maybe able to do some like productive things. There are so many organizations that you can volunteer for, or mutual aid organizations that you can help, or things that are learning, like things to be learning. So I think there's hope in the momentum towards action and learning and collaboration, things like that. That's a hard one. I don't have a perfect strike the target answer.
I think
celebrating small victories for sure. Thanks, Carlina.
Gandhi once said, become the change you want to see in the world. And what I would say is, don't wait for anybody to do what is right. You do it. Be consistent in your desire to seek justice. You be that change. This past week has been crazy because, these past 4 years have been a little nuts, right? And I'm not getting political, but what I want to say is that there's been one side or a side that has been very angry. And I've seen the videos of them sort of lashing out at people, whether it's because of someone else's race or whatever. And they're just so angry. And for some people, they get so afraid of that. And when I see those videos of people just being so angry, the first thing that comes to my mind is gratitude that I am not like them. That I've chosen in my life to seek hope, to seek love, because it takes a lot to hate. And so, just you do it. There's always going to be haters. And choose in your life not to be one of them and be grateful for it. You be the light, right? You find that hope, because you'll never know that maybe you may be a light for somebody else. You don't know how your light can ripple. Just don't lose sight of it. Don't blow it out because of some system or a group of people. Life is too short. Live it the best way you want, in a way that's really about your happiness and the happiness of others. But you be the change. It's in you. It's in you, right? So that's all I'll say. I'll shut up.
Yeah.
I also want to add one thing. I was talking recently with a friend who also graduated from Davidson with me, and we were trying to discuss, like, I don't think I'm that much older than folks at Davidson, but like our generation hasn't had the benefit of seeing multiple iterations of some of these like big social justice, civil rights movements or struggles. I mean, we have, but not in the, terms of decades and decades and decades. So it was hard to like place everyone. Tensions are super high, and everyone's like, is this the thing that's going to end the world? And but there has been conversations throughout history of like, is this the thing? And I think it's important to kind of, everyone that I have talked to that does policy work is like, it's a long game. They're like someone said in the chat, like you take the small wins. There's it's not a like steady incline up to the top. So just kind of reminding yourself of that, and also recognizing that like a lot of the tactics that white supremacists use and folks that were in the, you know, previous administration are trying to actively convince folks that it is a lost cause and there's no reason to stay engaged. So I think you're probably not the first person who's felt that, and I'm sure on this call even there are folks that like have the same thoughts as you and can offer support and things like that.
No, thank you so much. I mean, and if I were you guys, I mean, I take a screenshot of the chat feature, because I think there's a lot of you know, some positive sayings and sentiments in there to get to that point. So thank you. Believe it or not, like final question that I'm going to ask, that I think we've kind of here and there touched on, and before we are moving on to the next part of the breakout rooms. If either Paige or Miguel, if you could share, like what advice did you receive from somebody, you know, it could be personally that stuck with you professionally or in your professional pursuits, that you'd offer to current students, or maybe advice you wish you had received, that from experience you say, if I get the chance to tell somebody this, I will share that.
I can go first on this one. I think first of all, there are so many ways into this work. So you don't need to have one specific skill set to do the things. There are so many roles and spaces for different people. So you can really kind of make it your own and use your strengths rather than like taking a deficit mindset approach to this work. At least for me, navigating most recently job searching and things like that, there is this kind of like tension that I saw between the silos that exist in this field in terms of like issue area or technical skill area or things like that. Do you want to be a researcher, or do you want to work on the Hill, or like that kind of stuff? But at the same time, there's an interconnectedness with all of this, and there's a lot of overlap. So I just think like acknowledge that and be intentional when you're looking for different opportunities. Like there are some roles or jobs or whatever that are going to be very specific and very kind of like, this is what you will be doing, and there's not going to be that much room for maybe exploration, things like that. And then, but you can find the places where there's more to explore, more opportunity to have like a blended kind of skill set and things like that. So that's just something that I observed. And then I do want to read something from UNC has a minority health conference, if anyone is interested, every single year, and they get some pretty awesome speakers. And I don't know if anyone knows, I'm blanking on her name, Latasha Brown, I believe, who is a activist that fights voter suppression, specifically the Black vote. And sorry, I want to pull this up so that I know that I'm getting it right. So she spoke to our conference and she left us with these 3 questions to always ponder. And I wrote them down in my notes and I try to look back at them every once in a while. So the questions are, what are you called to do in this work? Where does the love live in this work? And where does American exceptionalism live in what you're doing? What are we socialized to believe when we're doing this work? So those are some like reflection questions that I always ask myself or try to come back to and think about, because I think they're pretty powerful. She definitely said it more powerfully than I just did, and her speech might be on YouTube if you want to check it out. But I really like those kind of reflection questions.
So I know you guys got to run. I'll tell you 3 things. Be true. You know, growing up as a queer person of color, I wish I would have known that it's okay to be yourself. Maybe would have saved me a lot of pain. So be true. Second thing, be good. Be good to other people. Whether they're the janitors, whether they're your teachers, or whether they're the president of the United States, be good to everybody. And number three, be a friend. You know, just because you're a man does not mean you can't be friends with women. Just because you're straight does not mean you can't be friends with someone who's trans. You'd be surprised how much and how enriched your world is going to be when you become friends. Now, every job I've had, from the White House to Levi's to Wells to Glide, has not been because I put my resume on LinkedIn. It's because someone has said, you know what? Miguel would be perfect for this job. So there's something to say about being good to people, because people will remember you. And they'll remember you by your character. And that's worth more than any experience you could put on a resume. Because jobs come and go, but who you are as an individual, that's what stays, and that's what people are going to remember you for. That's your biggest calling card, and your best resume item is who you are. So be true, be good, and be a friend.
Thank you, Miguel. I appreciate it. All right, I feel like we barely scratched the surface, and I knew that a half hour was going to fly, and I think it was, you know, not even fly. I think it was an eye blink. But I appreciate both of you. If either or both of you would like to and are able to stay for our networking into the breakout rooms, you are certainly welcome to. But I understand if, you know, if schedules are not permitting you to, and if not, then, you know, a big thank you from, you know, from the Davidson community to you guys.